Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's Tribe Talk. We're so glad that all of you are here with us today. We have a really awesome topic today. We are talking about sleep and sleep problems and what to do if you're having issues with your sleep. This is an issue that a lot of us deal with at one point or another in our lives. And some guidance and some help and how to get quality sleep and things that we can do to improve our sleep hygiene is always needed, I believe. And so let me introduce our special guest today. We have with us Lacey. He's a sleep coach who works with insomniacs to discover their own power and their internal resistance to sleep. Now, Derek himself is a former insomniac, and we're going to get into that in a minute and have Derek kind of give us some background and history on himself and how he turned that around for himself. But Derek says that his lifestyle brought him to rock bottom, but his commitment to more intuitive living and radical thinking helped him start sleeping and transforming his life. And now Derek works with people all over to help them transform their sleep habits as well. So welcome, Derek. We're happy to have you.
Happy to be here. How are you?
We're good. Thank
All
you.
right.
Thank you. Sleep is one of those issues that so many people struggle with. And, left unchecked for years and years can lead to a lot of health issues and a lot of concerns. And that's what we see with a lot of our clients. Bad sleep goes hand in hand with a lot of health issues. And so, the first time that I heard you speak, I thought your story was really inspiring because you yourself have a history of being an insomniac. So talk to us a little bit about, what that was like for you and kind of how you turned things around personally for yourself.
Yes. Well, for most of my life, for my in my formative years, I didn't realize I had an actual problem. I struggled with sleep, and I just thought that was a normal thing, and it became my identity, just as anything would, for a young child experiencing something that isn't normal that they think is normal. So I tell people that I've spent 4 decades in insomnia, but the first half of my life, I struggled sleeping, and that just it set me up to really kind of acquire insomnia in my adult years. And so, my entire life just felt ungrounded. I I rarely had a night where I was able to fall asleep easily. And so when I got into a situation, I was about 25 years old. This is 20 years ago. When I was introduced to a lifestyle that was really against the philosophy of sleep, I just immediately fell into really harsh insomnia. I was awake for 3 days at a time. I was experiencing every health issue that goes along with that. From depression to the back pain and shingles and all these things that were not normal for your average 25-year-old, 28-year-old, and this went all the way until 40. So my it's kind of hard to separate myself. I've only had 4 or 5 years kind of in the clear of that, and it is interesting to see what life is like on this side of it, because my perspective was just held so much from the view of insomnia.
What did you try all those years? I mean, I'm sure you had to try different tactics for falling asleep. I don't know if you did medication or if you did supplements. What are some things that you tried that you found just didn't work for you when you were trying to sleep?
Yeah, I started with the simple, clean stuff, B vitamins and herbs and that kind of that wouldn't work, and that crept into taking melatonin, and then that would only work for so long, and then that crept into Xanax, which crept into Ambien, which then led to a combination of things. None of these things would work consistently, so I would kind of go on a rotation, and it would be like Ambien, NyQuil, then Dramamine, and then I'd go back, and then Xanax, and then just kind of rotate things, because nothing would work 2 nights in a row. And then sometimes none of these things would work. And my darkest night, I actually came to a resolution with myself and decided I would never take anything ever again for sleep. And this was probably about 3 years before I would get to the other side and discover what my resistance really was. But there was a night I was on a ski trip. There was like nothing but couples, and I was on the couch, right? So I was like in a really horrible sleeping environment, and I was quite injured from my lack of snowboarding skills. And so like I didn't sleep for the first 2 nights of the trip. I hadn't slept, and to try to put me over the top, I took everything. I took muscle relaxers. I took a Xanax. I took an Ambien, and I drank a lot of alcohol that night, and I still couldn't sleep. And that was a real trigger for me. The next day I realized, crap, it's probably a good thing I didn't fall asleep, 1. And 2, there's nothing in a pill or in something that's outside of me that's going to make a difference. And so really, 3 years prior to me going through that personal revolution, realizing, okay, my sleep is actually in my control, this intuitive part of me made a decision. So to answer your question, though, I had tried everything, and it did, one of the things that I use as a discipline, as a tool, is something called sleep confidence, where the mind of a sleeper can actually passively default to focusing on sleep rather than fearing not being able to sleep. But each time I would try something, I was just lowering my confidence to sleep. I was bringing my ego into the process and not trusting my natural intelligence. So I often say to people, if you feel the words, or if you've said the words, I've tried everything and I can't sleep, and it's time for a different approach. It's time to go through that personal revolution and realize it's not going to be something that you put into your body.
And, that's common, because that's, in people's journeys towards healing, that's common. They usually will come to a point in their life where they're realizing that all of the medications that they've been taking have not been working. In fact, they're worse than they were when they started that journey 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago. And people want to start then figuring out, what's causing this, and and how can I self-heal? So you're saying that, like, you finally hit that point. What was your next step? I mean, this is a huge problem for a lot of people, and lack of sleep can really lead to and exacerbate pretty much all chronic diseases out there, because the body can't detoxify. The brain ends up becoming chronically inflamed when you can't sleep. Cells are not regenerating because you're not sleeping. So Like, what was that next step? Kind of like lead us through that. I'm super curious to find out, what those first steps were in your journey.
Yes. Well, you said something interesting, and you asked the question, what's causing this? And that really is the first step, is to break down single questions like that into several components. And I believe that's the first mistake that insomniacs make in trying to resolve a sleep problem, is looking for a single cause. And that's where the desire for taking things comes from, because we tend to think, okay, well, you need melatonin to sleep, so that must be the cause. Let me take melatonin. I can't relax. That must be the cause. Let me try this other thing that helps with that. And the first step that I made was more of that holistic awareness, that it's everything, that everything, every motion, the way I wave my hands, this is all related to what's happening. And so there was this moment where I realized I had to break everything into single parts, and then be a little patient with it and go one at a time, all understanding that. And I had the fortune of going through a coaching program when I had this realization. That's what brought me to the realization. So I realized I had this container to practice this in. So it could be a little more challenging when you don't have the leadership that leads to the faith, that leads to the understanding that, like, I'm on the right path if I just continue to do this. And so when I realized that I had this container, I was able to have faith in the process of, I could speak my reality. I could actually use language to invite sleep into my life. I could practice this little behavior change over here, and this would slowly bring sleep into my life. And so when you go through that, when you see things change radically just by inception of thought and language, the first time you experience that, you're like, whoa, okay. They're like, I could do a whole lot of things just by changing the inner game, the environment in between the ears. And that's what it was for me. I look back, and I, on some level, realized the potential that I had. And I just went through that revolution, and understood, like, I am in total control of this. And this problem, this worldwide problem, has actually been treated incorrectly. It's been using a bad concept. And the things that I was doing for years they were all introduced to me on, in some way from the outside by not everybody used bad concepts, but overall the default path to sleeping better, I realized, was focusing on the wrong things. And so as soon as I went through all that, I immediately declared myself a recovered insomniac, even though I wasn't sleeping like the way I sleep now.
So what I'm hearing is that you found many underlying causes. You discovered that there were several things contributing. And this is a huge discovery that, that we unveil for a lot of our clients, because most of them that have, fallen into and become labeled with some sort of chronic disease, or, chronic health issue, they have, in fact, multiple underlying causes that are contributing. There's never one thing. I mean, honestly, with all of the work that we do, we've never found a simple, one cause answer. There are usually many, many things. So, this is great that you're actually bringing to light this issue with sleep, and that you came to the realization through your journey that there were many underlying causes. In fact, what did you see were like, the top contributing factors for you? And do you see those same factors in the majority of people who are also struggling with sleep issues?
Yes, I do. And every sleep obstacle can be broken down into the emotional or physical category. And for me, just to simplify it, in the emotional category, at the top of the chart of the pyramid was safety. I came to realize that I never felt safe as a child because of circumstances, because I had clear evidence that it was trapped in me, but I was things would happen when I was asleep, just random things that we had no control over. I lived in a safe place, but attempted break-ins and random acts of violence, probably performed by kids thinking they're just having fun. But to the 4-year-old, to the 8-year-old, it made me feel really unsafe. I was always the last person to fall asleep, having an open eye out for anything that could be taking place. So for me, I never connected that until I thought about sleep in all these separate parts. So safety was my emotional obstacle, and then the physical part was just a reaction to the emotional part. And I had built a life that kept me up awake at night to feel safe and then fall asleep when the sun came up. I would, as a kid, I would purposely stay awake. Like in the summers, I would purposely stay awake until the sun came up. I just didn't feel safe to fall asleep until then. But as that, translated in my life, I favored the things that happened at night. I thought of myself, I convinced myself I was just a night owl. And then all the things that go along with that, eating late at night and ramping up behaviors late at night. So one of the first steps to resolving my insomnia was cutting myself off from food after a certain hour of the night. So that was my first step. I hadn't connected the emotional part yet, but it when I stopped eating late at night, which allows your circadian, that's so influential, because the gravity that takes place with circadian rhythm can't happen when you eat at night. It's not just about, oh, you're digesting food when you should be sleeping. It's way more simple than that, and more exponential than that. So I felt an immediate difference doing this consistently. But that was probably the biggest trigger for me, as simple as it sounds. And if you've tried that before, anybody listening who, there are, I guarantee you, people are saying, well, I've done that. I've tried that. And what you have to do is do it with the understanding that that's just one piece, and then just kind of have your detectors out for other little things that leads you to change.
Eric, you mentioned something earlier. You said the word sleep confidence. And I just by saying that, I know what you mean, because we've all gone through those periods of time where, for whatever reason, we're getting horrible sleep and we dread going to sleep each night because we tell ourselves, oh, here we go, I'm going to lay in bed again for a couple of hours before I go to sleep. Talk to me a little bit about what sleep confidence is and what you have to do to kind of train your brain to have that sleep confidence.
Yeah, it's a great question. Sleep confidence takes place two ways: consciously and then unconsciously. And the way to, depending on your relationship to sleep, but the way to improve sleep confidence is to do it unconsciously first. To improve it consciously, you would require the results of getting good sleep. So if you're struggling with sleep and you want to feel better about it, you would need to look back and say, well, okay, last night I slept great and therefore I can do it again. Somebody who's never been able to do that their entire life is going to struggle with that. And that is the paradigm that the world sleep method uses, is, hey, do this and then get a result from it and then feel like you're confident, right? Wait till something works to make that decision. So I realized that NLP, neuralistic programming, could be used to develop unconscious sleep confidence. And it's created by developing a feedback loop where you use language, and then that language creates thought, but then you could use thought that creates language. And so the better that you get at each one, the more of a snowball effect it has. And so when I work with a client, this is the first thing we do. And so we have conversations about sleep, and you hear right away, like, I can speak to somebody for 5 minutes about their sleep and then measure on a scale of 1 to 10 where they are in terms of sleep confidence. And that enlightens me on how to speak to them, on how to help, I guess, sort of like an English teacher would grade a school paper, right? Or like a diagram. I would help them with their language, help them make really easy decisions, and help them involuntarily focus on the right thing. So people say things like, well, I can't sleep, or I didn't get enough sleep last night, or I'll ask them to tell me about the sleep that they did get so that we could celebrate that. And they deductively start with the sleep they didn't get to inform of the sleep they did get, right? So it's just helping somebody sort of change the prescription on the lens of how they see sleep, because how you speak is actually how you're thinking. And then if you change the way you think, you can change the way you speak. So it's really simple in theory, but it's really, really, really hard when, for somebody like me, for 25 years or whatever, that's been the thought process. It's a reflex. So when you can, and the one of the best examples of unconscious sleep confidence is like a mantra. When you can learn to speak, mantras have become like a second language for me. One, like, I am sleep is a really simple one. But when you practice putting, let's say, a mantra just like on a screensaver, on a frame, on a wall, then that is registering on some part of your brain, and it's going to change the way you speak. It's also going to change the way you act. It's going to change the way you comb your hair, right? All that has an impact. And so when you can combine the unconscious, you start with that, and then even if you slept 30 minutes more, now you're going to get a little sandwich going with the unconscious and the conscious confidence. And then then it's sustainable. And it all comes from within. If I take NyQuil, then NyQuil gets the credit for the sleep, right? So it's a simple road that does require the understanding that sleep comes from the inside out, not the outside in.
That's very powerful. One of the things that I'm hearing you say, if we were to put it in some different words, is that you're teaching people about the power of their spoken word and the power of their thoughts to manifest into reality. And I think right now, with all of the, craziness going on in the world, that one of our hopes at Modern Holistic Health is that people will wake up and that they will see that many people are giving their power away very unknowingly. They don't even know. And we've all been raised kind of like that. We've been raised to feel like all the powers that be, whether it's power in a pill, or power of the government, or the power of our circumstances, that we are victim to that, and we just have to do the best that we can do. And I feel like so many of us don't even realize that we hold the power within us, and the Bible tells you that. And so whether you believe in the Christian-based Bible, or it's the Muslim version, or you're just very, very spiritual person, they all are teaching the same thing. You have power in the spoken word, and you have power in your thoughts. We have so much control over what we manifest for our reality, for everything in our lives, from our finances to our health to our sleep, to everything. And it sounds like, with the work that you've done in neuro-linguistic programming, right? Is that correct? Some of the work that you've done, that you're actually showing people how to take their power back. And that's just so important. I would love to get on another conversation and just talk with you just about just the power of our voice, and the power, the power that we have from within, and, and how we can reprogram ourselves. But because you're applying this to the concept of sleep, we have experts on our team who are applying this concept, so that people can step out of their label of, oh, I have fibromyalgia, I have bipolar, I am schizophrenic, I have celiac, all of these things that people label themselves. And as soon as they label themselves, they are giving their power away, the power that they have to heal themselves. They're giving that power away, and they don't even realize it, because we've been raised that, if we're inside of a box, if we're inside of some sort of a label, that we just feel more comfortable. Why do you suppose that we have become so comfortable and feel like it's so normal to give ourselves labels like that? Because I feel like the labels, especially when it comes to health and our current healthcare model, which has clearly failed us, that all of these labels are further leading people down the path to never getting better. And so we spend a lot of time working with people, and it's an amazing breakthrough when they finally say, you know what, I'm not attaching to that anymore. I'm not attaching to that anymore. It's a huge breakthrough. And some of our listeners who are here with us today are our clients, and they have had those breakthroughs, and they understand, and they're probably like high-fiving, doing the virtual high five right now. And then others are listening going, I'm not really sure what she's saying. So, maybe you can just elaborate a little bit on that, and maybe explain why from the time of birth that we're already, being conditioned to give our power away.
Yes, it's a beautiful question. And what I see sleep through, what led me to, Anne mentioned radical thinking, or like I use radical thinking, and what that is grounded to is a concept. And when I woke up to seeing that the concept being used for sleep was completely backwards and debilitating, disempowering, that's when I started to wake up, and I realized I needed to change the concept, that the concept is completely backwards. And one way of thinking about that is like when I see advice posted from the wrong people on how to live my life and how to win my health, when I can see that source isn't valid, I do the exact opposite, right? And so that's I had to reverse the concept with sleep. And I think when you apply that to the world, what has happened is a really, really bad concept. And what happens when you have a bad health concept, I am this, I am that, now you're separating, or you're combining the protagonist and the antagonist. Our lives as humans, the beauty in being a human being is being the protagonist against the antagonist, right? There's a problem that's introduced, and we use our resources, we use our thinking, we use our natural intelligence, we use our support, our community, to figure out how to step through that. That is what life is. That's what leads us to sleep. Every single moment that we are alive, we are trying to stay alive. That is what sleep is. Our desire to stay alive creates adenosine triphosphate, which leads to adenosine, which leads to sleep. That is sleep right there. So as soon as you change that concept to you being the problem and you not having a separate identity from the antagonist, all of a sudden you've had your ability to problem solve removed. You do not know how to fix it. And you continue to default to outside wisdom. So we have to realize that, like, I am not insomnia. Insomnia is not me. I am not celiac. Celiac is not me. For if it was me and I was it, I would have no idea how to behave. There would be no tension. We need tension. Life is art. Sleep is art. And for something to be artful, there has to be tension. So there is no tension when I have diabetes. There is no tension. There's no place for you to go from there. Not at all. So it really dials in to the concept. If it feels like you can't do something, if it feels like you've lost all your power to something, then what is the concept that is leading to that belief? And when you can change your concept, then everything, that is the primordial thing, the concept. When you have the concept correct and dialed in, then you don't have to think about anything. You will naturally do those things. So you have to find the concept. And in finding the concept, it's really, it's quite a simple process. You identify what your challenge is, and then you challenge that challenge. There are many different ways to do that, but like with sleep right now, for those of you who are having trouble sleeping based on the circumstances in the world right now, then you could ask yourself, well, what is causing me not to sleep? I can't sleep because blank. What is the reason? And when you can, let's say that the reason is I'm trapped in my house and I'm feeling really claustrophobic. I need my routine back. I miss my friends. I miss my family. And so that is the concept that you're using to sleep. I need to see my friends and family to sleep. I need to have free range of motion in order to sleep. And because sleep is a primordial state, because we all have a right to it no matter what, then that automatically becomes a bad concept. It's a faulty concept. So you could find the concept that is more true than that. And so you can say, I can't sleep because of this lockdown. I can't sleep because of this lockdown. And you call it out. And the more you say it, the more it either makes sense or it doesn't make sense. And then from there, you get curious and ask why you would be able to sleep. If you did sleep, despite the lockdown, what would that reason be? And you start to find these better concepts, right? I can sleep because I'm not the problem. Nothing is more powerful than I am. I am sleep. Sleep belongs to me. Sleep comes from the inside out, not from the outside in, right? Like I could quickly find some concepts in that. And so when somebody's not experiencing, and some people, unfortunately, are born with autoimmune issues and things maybe from the get-go where they got off to a bad start, and this may not feel as empowering to them, but still there's still power in it. There's still power in it. But you have to use a concept that is giving you all the control, all the power, and separating yourself from the problem does that. And realizing that there are other reasons that have led you to this, and it hasn't all been your fault. But because of that, because it wasn't your fault, you actually have the power to reclaim that power and get it back by changing your concept. So it all comes down to the concept. You have to use a better concept than the one that you're using now.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. It makes me remember, it makes me think of a few things that I want to share, because this kind of, might help drive the point home. But I think that naturally, if we weren't conditioned from the time that we were young children, starting, with kindergarten, I feel like it would be more natural for us to look within for answers, that we would look within.
Mm-hmm.
And you can call that prayer, you can call that meditation or whatever, but we are very, very powerful beings, and we can find the answers if we understand how to look within, and we trust ourselves, and we trust that we are one or connected with the source, whether you call that God or Allah or the creator or whatever you want to call it, right? But instead, we get conditioned to always look for answers outside. So, that's like going on to Dr. Google, or going into books, reading books, about looking for answers, talking to friends for answers, going to, what prescription can I get to fix this problem? And we don't even, understand the concept of, how do we look from within for answers, which should be a very normal concept. I truly believe we're all born with that. And if we weren't conditioned otherwise, we would very naturally look for answers. And, I remember when I became very, very ill, it didn't happen overnight. It was years in the making. But by the time that I became, so ill to the point where I had, totally lost my memory, I couldn't speak anymore. I was very, very physically ill as well. And then on top of that, just like the icing on the cake was this anxiety and this loss of hope and this depression, that I thought, oh my God, it's going to be easier for me to not live here anymore. Like, I don't want to be here. Like, I'm checking out of here because this sucks. I don't want to live like this. I'm ready to go into the next world because this is just terrible. And, as life was set for me, fortunately, my attempts to end it did not work. But I did end up losing my house and living out of my car. And, I lost everything. And I was very, very disconnected from everybody because I was, with all of the shame of being sick, and I was a doctor with 3 clinics, and I was supposed to be taking care of everybody. So, with all of the shame around that, I didn't even let anybody know what had happened. But some, beautiful things came out of that. Once I was completely broken down from the model that I had been raised in, that was a completely flawed model anyway, I was able to sprout and start opening up and seeing things from a different point of view that I was never able to see before. But it took a breaking of the old self, a total destruction of the old self, so that I could then rise up again in the new self and create a brand new reality for myself and have everything that I want in my life, regain my health, regain my mind, regain my ability to speak, which was huge. I mean, look, we've got our little talk show that we're on every week. For all of you guys listening, there was a time in my life I could not speak. I mean, I couldn't remember my son's name. And, but once once I cracked open like that seed that, you know, looks like it's being destroyed, but out of that cracked seed comes a brand new life from that seed. You know, that's what happened. And you know, so everything that you're saying is just so powerful. And I just, you know, I want the listeners to understand that, you know, you know, what Derek is saying is ultra powerful. And you know, if we can start working on changing our mindset, which is not easy. It takes a lot of work, and I honestly feel like it takes some coaching, it takes some leadership, somebody that you can reach out to, because this is a concept that we're not taught. We're not taught it in school. We're not even taught it in church. You know, in church, if you have a problem, and I'm not saying this in any kind of negative connotation, I'm just saying, like, this is what I learned in church. When you had a problem, you didn't go within. God was up there separate from me. He was up there somewhere, and I was begging and hoping he would hear me. You know, now I know that, you know, I am made from him. I am, you know, like we, you know, I am from him, and he is within me, and he breathed life into me. You know, he breathes life, or, you know, the, whatever you want to call it, the creator breathes life into you. And once I realized that power, it was like, it was this, my entire life changed. Everything about my life changed. Like it was a complete 180. It was almost like I was born again, you know, because everything that had been so hard and so difficult and so scary, you know, my first, you know, 35 years of life, you know, completely changed into another way. You know, when you're working with your clients, how long does it take for them to understand this concept? And I know that it's different for everybody. I mean, I understand that, because we work with people too. You know, it took me a long time, and I didn't have a coach. I didn't have somebody to help me. Like, it literally took me, like I said, breaking for me to, you know, decide that, okay, you know, I can actually stand back up, and I can, you know, look at things a different way. But when you're working with your clients, how long does it take them to really start to understand this concept that you're sharing with us today?
Yeah, that's I love the points that you're touching on, because you know, to answer the question, it helps to understand that the 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 circle, like the triangle that exists with blockages. I talked about the physical and the emotional, and now you're touching on the spiritual, which is beautiful, and it brings it full circle. And the how long it takes somebody just depends on the energy that can be created between those three. And you talked about changing mindset, and I think the struggle for people is that, yeah, it's difficult to change your mindset, like without a coach, let's say, or without some kind of support. But we're doing it. Mindset's a really difficult place to try to do something that feels so hefty. And when you bring in the spiritual essence, you know, the spiritual energy, you talked about not being able to speak, that's the throat chakra. Not being able to realize, like, God was your creator, that's the crown chakra, right? Change your mindset, that's the third eye. These are all energy centers that become blocked, but the source of the blocking isn't actually in those centers. The source of the blocking is in the more grounded spiritual centers, the root chakra, the sacral chakra, you know, the shame, right? All the things that take place when we're younger, those create blockages in the root, in the more physical chakras. And so, you know, we grow up without certainty. We grow up without safety. We grow up with shame. And all of that plays a role into, you know, depends where your energy is stuck. And sometimes if somebody's already cleared their physical spiritual centers, and then they come and work with me, it could be a literal 1 hour conversation, and they've broken free, and they start sleeping. So I've had people sleep 9 hours straight for the first time in their life the night of a conversation, right? After deciding to go cold turkey from their meds and never having been able to fall asleep without some kind of either struggle or using a pill. And so sometimes that energy could be cleared from somewhere. It depends on their story. So it really depends on where the energy is stuck. The direct answer to your question is like on average 6 weeks it takes somebody to go through the journey and, like I mentioned earlier, declare themselves over and beyond the other side of insomnia, even though looking at a chart, their sleep isn't necessarily like what the 8 hours straight that they wanted. But we have to think about the body as just a stack of spiritual centers that all in some way have been blocked. And everything that's happened in our life that really was advocating for our sleep, but we didn't have the perspective to see it that way. We saw it as a problem, so it got stuck. And we become triggered by that. And so you have to, how do you look within? I think you asked that question, like, we've forgotten that art of looking within. And you can think of any negative emotion and you can scan your body and you can feel where it is. You can feel the chakra that leads you to the story, that leads you to the event, right? Somebody can close their eyes, touch that, put their hand over that center, and they see the colors, they hear the noises, and they put an identity to the person that was part of that experience, and then they can heal that. And then sometimes when you heal that, miracles happen. It's like a literal miracle. And that's what sleep is physical, emotional, and spiritual. I've developed a system called the Art of Falling Asleep, which takes something that seems so complex, but is really so simple. And it uses art form to be able to apply that and access all three of those conditions: the emotional, the physical, and the spiritual. So it all depends on how artful one is willing to get into the process, and I'm even getting better, right, as I evolve as a teacher, as a coach, in helping them access that. But the bottom line is we can all do it. There's nobody that can't sleep. We can all do it. And if you're not, there's just stuck energy somewhere. You are not the problem. You are not the antagonist.
Derek, we got a couple of questions that are coming in from people who are listening in. And this one is from Catherine. And I think it's a great question because it allows us to kind of touch on sleep hygiene. So Catherine says she's been working on her own sleep issues, but she's become troubled by the poor sleep hygiene practices at her mom's nursing home. And she thinks this is making her mother's health issues worse. So she understands that these issues are not unique to her healthcare center, things like ambient light, lights being turned on in the room at night by nurses. She's tried earplugs and eye masks, which haven't worked for her. What are your suggestions for things she can do from a sleep hygiene perspective to help get better sleep at night?
Yeah, well, I've spent a lot of time in those environments, and they are definitely not set up for circadian rhythm. Starting with the just people being inside all day, not getting enough light. So she could request more exposure to sunlight. Sunlight is that is the cause of sleep. Sunlight. That's why I'm outside right now, even though it's, approaching 100 degrees or something like that. I got a little sweat on my forehead, but I am literally making melatonin. And and getting infrared light, which is making ATP, right? So more exposure to light. And then if she could even install a lamp that has an incandescent light so that they wouldn't turn on the fluorescent or the LED lights that they're turning on and using, that really, it kind of sickens me when I go into a hospital and somebody's healing after a surgery or anything, and there's a big bright fluorescent light on their body, which is just reversing any healing that could be taking place. So to control the light environment, and then and about blue blocking glasses, this is key. This putting these over the eyes. This is how going back to the spiritual topic. Like you can't connect to your spiritual chakras if you're not grounded to the earth. And these will block the light that is ungrounding you from the earth, and then also block the light that's stealing your melatonin, that's telling your pituitary gland not to release, not to connect with your pineal gland, signal it to release melatonin, the thing that you need for sleep. So if she could get more sunlight and change the lighting environment, she's going to create sleep. Her clock is going to work a little bit better. She's going to accrue sleep energy. And then you got to play a little bit of defense, because the light that these crazy lights, these awful lights that are not from God, steal our sleep. And we've, Earth, however old it is, 600 million years, and, humans on Earth, it's been 100 and something thousand generations that there was no light from an electric source. And it's just the last 100 something years that we've been living under this light, and sleep is a huge problem. So you've got to really, people just, they need to realize, I see so many people spending so much time and energy trying to do things. For years, I was taking all these pills without blocking blue light. It made no sense. So you have to block the blue light, got to get more sunlight, and then you have to control the electromagnetic frequencies in the environment that you're spending your time in.
So while we're talking about the blue light glasses, what do you recommend? I mean, how often should people wear those? All day, half of the day? What do you recommend as far as using the blue light glasses?
Anytime that you are seeing blue light, which is the light that's coming from technology, iPhones or cell phones, computers, overhead lights, televisions, you want to block that. If it's daytime, you want to block at least half of that, because you still need a little bit of blue light. It's a catch 22. You're not supposed to see fake blue light, but you're supposed to see some kind of blue light. It just means we're not designed to be inside. So you want to, if you're working in front of a computer, you want to block blue light with lenses like these. These yellow ones block half of the spectrum. But once the sun goes down, you want to block all of blue light. So at night, once the sun goes down, I put on my orange glasses, and if I need to look at my phone, I use those. If I want to binge on series of documentaries, then I use those to watch that. If I go to the store for groceries, I wear them. I don't let blue light into my eyes. Like that's my my truth, right? That's the thing that guides that's my concept that I live by, my most powerful concept.
Yeah. I feel like it's really powerful when we can remember that we're born onto this earth and we are a part of a very complex and beautiful and perfectly made ecosystem. As humans, I feel like our egos get in the way and we feel like we're like rulers of the earth kind of a thing. No, 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 no. Like we are a part of this ecosystem. So, but we forget that. And there are many different, you can break down the ecosystem of the planet Earth into many different micro ecosystems. But even the micro ecosystems all work together to keep everything that is living on this earth in harmony and to keep everything healthy. So when many of us are thinking of an ecosystem, we're thinking of like the ecosystem in the Amazon, or we're thinking of the ecosystem that's in a coral reef, right? Or even the ecosystem that's in your garden, in your backyard. If you're growing tomatoes and lettuce and all of that, like there's actually an ecosystem. Farmers who are eco farmers, they understand the ecosystem very, very well. There's a really great movie about that, about a couple out in California, I believe, who bought a bunch of land, and I can't remember the name of it, but it would be a great movie for everybody to watch. But they bought all this land and everything was dead. Like the soil was dead. They couldn't even grow plants on it. And they spent 10 years or something recreating this ecosystem where, they learned that like there's a purpose for all of the bugs. There's a purpose for the chicken to eat the bugs. Like there's a purpose for the ladybugs and the butterflies and the bees and all of these things, so that you can actually have healthy crops, right? And so and then we've got like the ecosystem. We talk about it a lot of times. We'll talk about the ecosystem inside of our gut, our gut microbiome. There's an incredible ecosystem in there. If you look at it under a microscope, with the right type of microscope where you can actually see what's going on, you've got all different kinds of little bugs in there, all different sizes, all different shapes, colors. They do all kinds of different things, and they give us life. And without them, we cannot live. We'll start having a lot of health problems. And what I'm hearing you say, when you're talking about turn off this electricity, turn all this stuff, that stuff is man-made, and it actually alters our ecosystem of everything around us and creates a chain reaction, that is further harming not only ourselves, but our planet. It's harming our kids. It's harming our planet. It's harming everything. And I feel like, right now that so many people are in a more of a still mode, this is a really good time to think about concepts like this. We need to kind of go back to basics. We can use all of the science and technology that we are such incredible beings that we can develop and create these amazing things, but we need to be very, very careful how we use them. Because if we're not careful, we're going to destroy everything. And we're already seeing our health take a really big toll, not just, here in the United States, but around the world, we're seeing our health take a huge toll. And so, getting back to some basics, and thinking about things as simple as light, the light in your house, that's super, super powerful. I was actually thinking about something for the person asking about what they could do for their mom. It's just a thought, but maybe number one, having a talk with the staff there, right? And maybe talking to them about sleep. Or maybe you could go in and actually give a seminar on sleep, and they'll be listening to it, right? Always doing it in
Please
a
mention that to them. I'd be happy to go. I'll go over there right now.
Yeah. Derek is available for these different speaking events, and that would be really great. And what would be really wonderful too is if the staff ended up hearing that. But I was wondering about maybe even like a salt lamp. Something that could put off maybe a little bit of a different frequency of light, something that's soft, that's not going to cause a lot of problems. I can understand where if they're in a healthcare facility where, the nurses, we as the children of a lot of our parents who are getting older and we need help, we would be livid if the nurses weren't going in to check and our parent was in distress and nobody went in to check at night. But on the other hand, what can we do to make it a little bit easier? Maybe, and I'm sure there are different kinds of lights that you can buy that are not going to be as offensive, to the body, but even something as simple as a salt lamp. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, you're exactly right. Salt lamps work. I use red light bulbs at night. That's what I use to read. or do anything. They're really comfortable, and you know this because your brain, your body just gets it right away. It's the same effect as wearing the blue light blocking glasses, except like these are orange. It's like putting an orange light bulb in there. At like the last couple hours before bed, I put on red ones. So it's just like using a red light bulb. It blocks like 90% of the green light frequencies in addition to blue light. So putting a red light bulb in there, it's quite pleasant. It really is. So that's a simple thing to do. Salt lamps do that, but they will give off a little more green light, maybe even a little bit of blue light. It's definitely an upgrade. I mentioned incandescent lights just because I think it's an easier first step. And the problem, again, back to bad concepts, the whole, I think it's a bait and switch, but I had years ago, I had somebody, or not somebody, the city, when I lived in Los Angeles, they put energy saving bulbs. They gifted me with some energy saving bulbs on my doorknob, right? Like, here you go, Merry Christmas. And I mean, it was just being, fed to me. And it's such a bad concept of use this light bulb to save energy. So people are trying to save pennies, right? When it's really robbing them of their health and then like it taking away their ability to heal. So it could be a little challenging when you go step into the system and challenge their thinking so extreme by putting in red light bulbs or incandescent lights that are completely against their core beliefs or even understanding. They don't understand these things. They need to be taught, but how are they going to do that are they okay with their electricity bill going up $3,000 every month? I'm not so sure. So you kind of have to take responsibility, and they're not going to, they can't stop you. If put a lamp in there, use a red light bulb, use an incandescent light, do something that's an upgrade. But for it to change like on a big level, I think we're seeing right now in the world, people are waking up to some of these concepts, some of these bad concepts, and realizing like, the people making bigger decisions for our health don't really get it. And there's so much evidence when you look at blue light, when you look at GMO crops, when you look at all these things that you spoke of, they're all terrible concepts. So the world health concept is bad. It doesn't work. And to go back to your point, like ecosystems, the most powerful thing that you could take away as a concept from this to guide your life is anything that's real has sunlight in it. Sunlight, if we got rid of the sun, we would not last very long, right? We would all perish. So things have to have sunlight in them. When they have sunlight, they have a photonic charge, and the earth releases a negative charge. So just like any battery, there's an anode charge coming through the ground from the planet. And we need that electricity. We are batteries. We need that electricity coming through our eyes, through the light, and coming through the ground, and coming through our food and our air. All of these things are what create life. So anything, if you just turn left and right, anything you see that would still be here if you got rid of the sun, GMO corn it'd be like the cockroach. It would outlast us all, right? Don't put that in your body. That's a bad concept. People don't realize that. They want to inject things into you that don't have sunlight. And that's not the way the world works. That's not the way the world works because of these healthy ecosystems. When you put something inside you that doesn't have a negative charge, all of a sudden you have electrons that are jumping ship from your healthy atoms, and that creates free radicals. That's what causes cancer. But it has all these other effects, right? It's like having a dance floor filled with people dancing a waltz and then removing one of the partners, and then having the partners having this need to find another partner. The person that lost their partner goes to find another partner. It just creates chaos. So things have to have a negative charge coming from this, the positive charge from the sun and the negative charge from the earth. look at your food that way, if you look at your air that way, and if you look at your light that way, then you will reverse your concept, and you can't make a bad decision. It's pretty simple. Anybody, a first grader, could understand that concept. It's got to be real, or it doesn't go inside.
Derek, if someone wants to reach out to you, work with you, if they need some help and some guidance when it comes to really getting a handle on why they're having sleep issues, how does someone do that? Where can they contact you? What's your website that they can go to?
Yeah, they can go to DerekLaceyCoaching.com, DerekLacey. I'm sure it's written somewhere, but yeah, DerekLaceyCoaching.com, and they can find a lot of resources there. I'm just upgrading my platform right now, but I have some meditations up there, some more on the way, and there's an free ebook, and there's some literature, a link to my site Dormies for the blue blocking glasses. They can read about the science and about how important that is to sleep. So DerekLaceyCoaching.com, and that you can contact me from there, and figure out a way. You know, anybody who's struggling with sleep is anything from one conversation to a 20-minute conversation to a long-term coaching experience is the answer. But you're somewhere probably in the middle. And what I'm trying to share with people is that there is no matter who you are, there is something that can be done. You do not have to. And sometimes it's really, really simple. So start to poke around at what it would be like to sleep better, and the possibilities for you. And because you might just scratch the surface and say, oh, wow, it actually wouldn't require very much work to do this. And either way, whatever work goes into it, your life gets better than the first step you take. You cannot take a step to holistically improve your sleep without it having a tremendous effect on the ecosystem of results, you know? So.
That's so inspiring. Thank you so much for joining us today. And for all of you who are listening, we will make sure that we put Derek's information, his contact info, and his ebook and other stuff like that. We'll be sure to put it in our upcoming newsletter. I am working on that this week as we speak, so we plan to have the newsletter out at the end of the month. So, you know, you can definitely reach out to Derek. That was just great information. I just don't even know what else to say, except that we would love to have you back, you know, so that we can talk more about sleep, you know, more about, you know, tapping into your power within. I think that that's so needed right now. You know, that, you know, we as a human race, we need to understand the power that we have within, the power to make change, that you know, relying on everything outside of us does not guarantee anything for us. So we need to be our own guarantee. And we can do that if we can just wake up and understand the power that we have within. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And honestly, the things you brought up really aligned with everything I've been doing. So it was really lovely to have a conversation, you know, with you, and for you to connect on these points that I felt intuitively, you know, I wanted to talk about anyway. So it was a real fun conversation for me because it really invited my true concepts and, you know, opinions on sleep. So yeah, I'd love to be back. Do this again. The movie, I believe, was We Bought a Farm, by the way.
That's a great movie, by the way. I took my 8-year-old to see it, and she loved it. So it's a really great movie for kids, too.
Yeah, really, really good. Well, great. We look forward to having you back. Thank you once again. Go and enjoy your day. Maybe go and cool off a little bit. It's got to be really hot where you are right now.
Yeah, it's warm. I'll go inside, and yeah, I'll go inside. But you know, the more you're outside, the more heat you can take. So I'm good. I'm good.
True. This
I
is
have
true.
yeah. I have a session right now, so I'll do that, and then I'll cool out. I'll jump into I'll go do some cryotherapy or something like that.
Perfect.
I'll get frozen.
Perfect. Thank you everyone for joining us on Tribe Talk Live today. We have some really great speakers that we continue to line up week after week. So be sure that you check your emails from us so that you can see our amazing lineup of speakers, and so that you can continue growing on your health journey. Love you. See you again soon.